Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. Monday Night Raw tonight was from the Bon Secours Wellness Arena in Greenville, South Carolina. And this was Monday Night Raw's go-home show for Crown Jewel, which is this Saturday. And Monday Night Raw tonight, I thought it was a decent show. I thought this was much better than last week's show. Last week's show was absolutely fucking awful. But tonight on Monday Night Raw, we had Dominik Mysterio versus Ricochet. We had the main roster debut of the Creed brothers, Brutus and Julius Creed. And we had Ivy Nile also brought up. She ended up accompanying the Creed brothers. The Creed brothers, they were from NXT. They got called up to Monday Night Raw tonight. And they end up taking on the Alpha Academy, Otis and Chad Gable. We had DIY, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa reuniting after 3 years. It's been 3 years since we last seen, DIY together. So they end up taking on Imperium, Giovanni Vinci, and Ludwig Kaiser. We had Xia Li versus Candice LeRae. Seth Rollins was in action, and he ended up taking on JD McDonagh. We had a trick or street fight, Chelsea Green versus Natalya. And the main event, we had Damian Priest versus Sami Zayn. Overall, Monday Night Raw, decent show tonight. And like I said, it was a lot better than last week's show. But anyways, let's jump right into the review. Monday Night Raw opened up tonight with Rhea Ripley, Dominik Mysterio, and JD McDonagh. So all three of them end up coming out. They made their way down to the ring. Rhea Ripley got on the mic. She welcomed everyone to Monday Night Raw, the show that the Judgment Day runs. Rhea ended up saying that they have proved it every week, and that's not just a saying. Rhea ended up going on to say that they've taken care of every single superstar that has stood in their way. She ended up going on to say that last week, Damian Priest absolutely shattered Cody Rhodes' ankle. And that's just the beginning. She ended up going on to say tonight, her dirty Dom, her Latino heat, is going to put down Ricochet and remind him not to disrespect the Judgment Day. And then Rhea Ripley ended up saying, then we have JD McDonagh, who's going to remind Seth frickin' Rollins exactly what it feels like to be an enemy of the Judgment Day. So she ended up saying, as for Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre, they've got some decisions to make. She ended up saying, whichever one decides to make the right deal with the Judgment Day will determine who is walking out of Crown Jewel as a loser, like the rest of the people, or the World Heavyweight Champion. So Rhea ended up going on to say about Crown Jewel that she'll be stepping into the ring with 4 of the best women in WWE. She ended up saying for her, that's just another opportunity to prove to everyone who is the most dominant woman in the WWE. And Rhea ended up saying that she'll prove why Mommy is always on top. So Sami Zayn's music ended up hitting. Sami Zayn ended up coming out. So the crowd there in Greenville were chanting for Sami. Sami got on the mic. He ended up saying that he knows he wasn't invited out here, but he's sick of hearing Rhea Ripley talk about the power of the Judgment Day and how they have all the championships. Sami wanted to say that he's tired of hearing about how the Judgment Day runs Monday Night Raw. So Sami Zayn ended up saying that he's going to tell Rhea Ripley something about him as if they don't know from fighting him for the last 6 months. So Sami Zayn ended up saying that his entire career has seen him fight people who think the Judgment Day and think all that matters is power. You know what I'm saying? They think they can do whatever they want in the name of power. And that if that's the name of their game, that's fine. Sami Zayn ended up saying that they need to understand that his game is rebellion and resistance. You know what I'm saying? That it doesn't matter if he has to fight them all by himself. As long as there is a breath of air in his body, he will fight. So Sami Zayn ended up saying that he will fight the Judgment Day and everything they stand for until they are no more. So Rhea Ripley, she was cackling into the mic. Rhea ended up saying that it's hilarious that Sami Zayn can resist all he wants, and that it doesn't matter. She ended up saying that they don't need the numbers when it comes to him, and that if management says it's okay, Sami Zayn can go one-on-one against Damian Priest. So Dominic started to talk, and of course we got the piped in boos. It's like every single week when Dominic talks on the mic and the piped in boos come in, it gets absolutely worse and worse every single week with these piped in boos. So Dominic was like, oh, we should teach Sami Zayn a lesson right now. So Rhea Ripley, Dominik Mysterio, and JD McDonagh squared off against Sami Zayn. Ricochet then ended up running out to help Sami Zayn. Rhea Ripley backed both Dominic and JD McDonagh off. So the three of them left the ring. McDonagh charged Ricochet, but Ricochet sended McDonagh over the top rope. Dominic was going to go for a cheap shot to Ricochet, but Ricochet turned on Dominic, and Dominic ended up falling. And pretty much that was basically that. That was how the segment ended. But overall, your typical Judgment Day, they come out there saying, oh, we run Monday Night Raw. Oh, we have all the titles. And then Sami Zayn comes out there. It's the same thing every single week. But I gotta say, this was a strong open to Monday Night Raw here. So even though it's the typical Judgment Day, they come out there and they say all that stuff. Sami Zayn makes his way out, feuding with the Judgment Day. We've seen this every single week. And then we went to the first match of the night. Dominik Mysterio versus Ricochet. And this was a good match here. We had Rhea Ripley and JD McDonagh still out there. Ricochet ended up taking Dominic down with a handspring head scissors takeover, and then Ricochet delivered a drop kick to Dominic, which he went for the cover, and Dominic ended up kicking out. Ricochet started punching away at Dom and chopped away at Dom's chest. Ricochet ended up sending Dom into the ropes, but Dom ended up holding on. Dom dropped Ricochet on the apron, and he blocked the kick from Ricochet. He ended up pulling Ricochet into the middle rope. Dom then ended up kicking Ricochet off the apron, to which Ricochet ended up landing on the floor. Dom ended up going outside. He ended up driving Ricochet into the commentary table. Rhea Ripley looked happy with that spot. Dom ended up getting Ricochet back into the ring. He then shouldered Ricochet in the corner. Dom whipped Ricochet sternum first into the turnbuckles. Dom started stomping Ricochet down the corner, and then Dom started taunting the crowd. Dom got Ricochet to his feet. He ended up whipping Ricochet into the opposite corner. Dom went for another whip, but Ricochet ended up twisting to the apron. He ended up kicking Dom in his face. Ricochet ended up coming off the ropes, but Ricochet landed on his feet when Dom moved out of the way. Ricochet then ended up hitting a backflip drop kick and an enziguri to Dom. Then Ricochet followed up with a awesome, nice Northern Lights suplex. He ended up flown over into a suplex to Dom. Ricochet then ended up hitting a standing shooting star press. He ended up going for the cover, to which Dom ended up kicking out. And that led to Dom rolling out of the ring to recover. Dom got up. Ricochet immediately wiped Dominic out with a suicide dive. So then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Dom ended up applying a chin lock to Ricochet. Ricochet fought up and elbowed out of the chin lock. Dom quickly ended up cutting Ricochet off with a kick to his midsection. And Dominic ended up hitting the Three Amigos to Ricochet. Dom hit all three. So Dom ended up hitting a catapult into the second rope. He was signaling for the 619 to Ricochet. Dom went for the 619, but Ricochet ducked, and Ricochet connected with a handspring back elbow to Dom. So both guys were down. Ricochet got to his feet, started punching away at Dom. Dom reversed the whip, but Ricochet ended up catching Dom with a hurricanrana into the corner. Ricochet then ended up hitting a running shoulder before he headed to the top rope, and he delivered a diving crossbody block to Dom. Ricochet followed up with a springboard moonsault off the middle rope. He ended up going for the cover, and Dom ended up kicking out. Ricochet then lifted Dom, but Dom raked Ricochet's eyes, and that led to Dom connecting with a blockbuster, and he headed to the top rope. Dom landed on his feet because Ricochet ended up moving out of the way. Ricochet took Dom down with a super kick, and Ricochet ended up pulling Dom into position. He climbed to the top rope. Rhea Ripley got on the apron. Rhea Ripley distracted the ref. McDonagh ended up going for a cheap shot to Ricochet, but Ricochet ended up jumping at McDonagh. He landed on the apron. So Dom pulled Ricochet into the ring. He ended up getting a roll-up on Ricochet, and Dom got his feet on the ropes. And there you go. Dominic ended up winning the match. And the ref didn't even see Dom's feet on the ropes. So Dominic gets the win. Post-match, Ricochet, he was irate, and he super kicked Jaden McDonagh out of the ring, and he hit Dom with the recoil. Ricochet ended up going to the top rope, and Rhea Ripley pulled Dominic out of the way. And pretty much that was basically that. The Judgment Day headed up the ramp. But overall, this was a good match between Dominic and Ricochet here. You know, Ricochet ended up carrying Dominic, through the match here. But good match. And then we had a video package highlighting DIY, Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. And Gargano and Ciampa as DIY, they were great together, in NXT. They had one of the best feuds that WWE has ever produced, when they were in NXT, when Ciampa was heel. It was just a fantastic feud with Gargano and Ciampa, back in the day. But I'm glad that we got a highlight reel of DIY. It's been 3 years since they tagged. So after Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had Raquel Rodriguez, Smiley Raquel, and she was saying none of the women she's facing at Crown Jewel have the drive and determination she has. She ended up saying that she may be an underdog, but that will make it even sweeter when she takes the woman down. So that was that. Little video package from Raquel. And then we had the Alpha Academy, Chad Gable and Otis, versus the Creed brothers, Brutus and Julius Creed. And this was their main roster debut. They got called up from NXT along with Ivy Nile, to which she accompanied the Creed brothers. And Otis and Chad Gable, of course, accompanied by Maxine Dupri and Akira Tozawa, which, in my opinion, it's stupid that they added Akira Tozawa into the Alpha Academy. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But this was a very good match here. This was a good showcase for the Creed brothers here. You know, if you didn't watch their matches in NXT, the Creed brothers are absolutely very good. You know, check out some of their matches in NXT. They are very talented. So we had the match end up starting with Chad Gable and Julius Creed. So both Gable and Creed end up doing some takedowns. Gable ended up hitting an arm drag to Julius, but Julius ended up catching Gable with an arm drag of his own. Both guys locked up. Gable ended up hooking a side headlock, and he ended up taking Julius down with a drop toe hold. Gable then ended up applying a front face lock to Julius, to which Julius ended up powering Gable up in position for a delayed vertical suplex, and Julius ended up getting to his feet, tagged in his brother, Brutus. Julius ended up handing Gable off in a suplex position to Brutus, so Brutus ended up completing the vertical suplex to Gable, and you know that was crazy. You know, I like how the way Julius got Gable in that delayed vertical suplex position, and then handed Gable off to his brother Brutus, and then Brutus did the vertical suplex. Very cool. So Otis tagged in, and he went up against Brutus. Brutus ended up grabbing a waistlock on Otis, but Otis ended up slinging Brutus off. Otis ended up taking Brutus down and sending him into the corner. Brutus then sidestepped an avalanche from Otis, and he came off the second rope with a double axe handle to Otis. Julius tagged in, and so both Brutus and Julius ended up sending Otis into the corner. Otis ended up popping out of the corner and delivered a double clothesline to the Creeds. Gable then ended up tagging in. He ended up hitting a diving double clothesline to the Creeds. Gable and Otis ended up hitting the Creed brothers with stereo exploder suplexes. And so Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Brutus was in control of the match. He ended up applying an armbar to Chad Gable. Gable fought up. Brutus ended up sending Gable into the ropes. Gable ended up picking Brutus's leg and applied an ankle lock. Brutus ended up countering that ankle lock into a roll-up, to which Gable kicked out. Brutus then ended up lifting Gable, ended up hitting a modified angle slam, and Brutus ended up going for the cover, to which Gable ended up kicking out. You know, I like that Brutus, used, the angle slam, in honor of Kurt Angle there. So Gable ended up grabbing Brutus and connected with a German suplex to Brutus. So both Julius and Otis ended up tagging in. Otis ran through the Creed brothers, ended up hitting a double clothesline to the brothers. Otis ended up giving the brothers each a scoop slam. He ended up crushing Julius with a short arm clothesline. Otis then avalanched Julius in the corner, and he ripped his shirt off. Otis then ended up delivering the caterpillar elbow drop to Julius. So Otis ended up going for the cover, and Julius ended up kicking out. Otis ended up grabbing Julius, and he ended up going for a World's Strongest Slam, but Julius ended up getting out of that, and he ended up hitting a nasty knee to Otis's jaw. And the spot that I really liked here at the end of the match, where Brutus ended up diving, Otis caught Brutus and hit the World's Strongest Slam, and Otis went for the cover. Julius ended up delivering a 450 splash from the top onto Otis to break up the pin, and then Gable ended up splashing them with a moonsault, which that was awesome. Great spot there. Just absolutely, fantastic there. So Maxine Dupree got on the apron. Ivy Nile came over and pulled Dupree down. Ivy Nile ended up getting on the apron, but Maxine pulled Ivy down. Akira Tozawa ended up stepping in between them because Dupree and Nile, were arguing. So Ivy Nile ended up hitting Akira Tozawa with a German suplex on the floor. Gable was knocked out of the ring. Otis ended up clotheslining Brutus down, to which Julius was the legal man in the match. Julius ended up getting Otis in the electric chair. Brutus came off the top rope, and he delivered the Brutus Ball. And that was amazing. So Julius ended up going for the cover, and there you go. The Creed brothers end up getting their first win on their first night on Monday Night Raw. But what an awesome showcasing this was for the Creed brothers, and I really do hope that they give the Creed brothers a big push here on Monday Night Raw. You saw the showcasing from them here tonight. They're gonna do good on Monday Night Raw. And I'm like, are they teasing us there with Maxine Dupree and Ivy Nile? Are we gonna get a match between them two? God, I hope not. So post-match, the Alpha Academy shook hands with the Creed brothers, and they end up holding their arms in victory. So that was that. Overall, very good match this was, and like I said, an awesome showcasing of the Creed brothers here in their debut on the main roster. And then we went to the Judgment Day. They were in their locker room. Balor and Damian Priest were there. The New Day, Xavier Woods, and Kofi Kingston. They end up coming into their locker room dressed as the new Judgment Day. So they end up saying that they're not happy that Balor and Priest doesn't have any candy for them. So Kofi and Xavier bumped into Rhea Ripley, Dominik Mysterio, and Jaden McDonagh as they were leaving. So Balor ended up saying that he was happy Dom won his match, but what happened after was not good. Dom ended up saying that Ricochet will pay for what he did. Damian Priest ended up saying that never would have happened if the entire Judgment Day was out there. Rhea Ripley ended up saying that they have other business to attend to which Priest ended up saying that there is a lot going on this week. He ended up saying that he'll beat Cody Rhodes at Crown Jewel. Then maybe he'll cash the briefcase on Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, or even LA Knight. And he ended up saying that they're supposed to be equals, and he is not happy that Rhea Ripley made a match for him against Sami Zayn. Rhea Ripley ended up telling Priest that she only did that because he is the punishment of the Judgment Day. Priest ended up saying that this night isn't about him, but rather the Judgment Day, because they run this place. So that was, that. And then we had a video package as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial with Nia Jax. Nia Jax ended up saying that she squashed everyone since coming back to WWE. And that she'll show the world she's the most dominant woman on Monday Night Raw and will be the next Women's World Champion at Crown Jewel. Sorry, Nia Jax, but Rhea Ripley is going to retain the title at Crown Jewel. No way are they taking the Women's World Championship off of Rhea Ripley. And then we had Miz TV. Miz was in the ring, and there was a table in there. It had carved pumpkins on, the table, because of course Halloween is tomorrow. So Miz welcomed everyone to Miz TV. He ended up saying since the announcement of Bash in Berlin, he wanted to get the biggest superstar he could. Yeah, Bash in Berlin is WWE's new premium live event, and it's going to take place next year on the last day of August, August 31st, from Berlin, from the Mercedes-Benz Arena. And it's WWE's first ever premium live event done in Germany. So I guess for the premium live event calendar in August, we're going to have SummerSlam first, and then Bash in Berlin, I would have to predict. So they end up announcing that. So Miz ended up saying that this guy is making his WWE talk show debut. So he ended up introducing the Intercontinental Champion, Gunther. You know, Gunther was the guest on Miz TV. So Gunther didn't come out. Miz tried again to have Gunther come out. So Gunther didn't even come out. So Miz was wondering if he needs to say it in German. So then out came Giovanni Vinci and Ludwig Kaiser. Kaiser got on the mic. He ended up saying that the ring general isn't coming out just because the Miz wants him to. He ended up saying that Miz is everything that is wrong with the WWE Universe today. He ended up saying that Miz embodies everything they despise, and that he is nothing but a clown. So Miz ended up saying to Kaiser that he's been called a lot of things, but he's never been a sidekick. So Vinci ended up saying that Miz was a sidekick to Maurice on Total Divas. So Miz made fun of Vinci. He ended up saying, "Oh, he talks. He spoke." Because, of course, Vinci never talks. So Miz corrected Vinci and saying that it was Miz and Mrs. and that Vinci should be happy to be yelled at by someone as hot as Maurice. So we had Vinci end up being yelled at by Kaiser. Vinci ended up going to give a rebuttal, but Kaiser ended up cutting Vinci off. He ended up saying that he only talks when he is told by him. So Gunther finally came out. Gunther was wearing a nice suit, of course, black suit. Gunther ended up saying that he is not Miz's guest, and that he is here to make some things clear to the Miz. He ended up saying it's 2023, and he's still doing talk shows. Second, the mat is sacred to him. He ended up saying everything Miz does in the ring is beneath him. And Gunther ended up saying to the Miz that Miz is beneath him. Gunther then went on to say that he does not respect the Miz. So Miz ended up saying to Gunther that was a heck of a way to break the ice, and that he's heard that all before. Miz ended up saying that he interviewed an Invisible John Cena in the ring. Yeah, remember how awful that was? Miz punching air like, and doing the skull crushing finale to that Invisible John Cena, doing it to fucking air. So he ended up saying that he interviewed John Cena in the ring that was more entertaining than Gunther. So Miz ended up saying that he is the biggest superstar that WWE has. Gunther ended up saying that that's exactly the issue with the Miz. He ended up saying when the bell rings, it doesn't matter how entertaining he is. When it gets serious, that's when it matters what kind of wrestler you are. He ended up saying that's why Miz is hosting a talk show, and that's why he is the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. So Miz ended up saying that he can be serious when he wants to be. He ended up saying that he was serious when he beat Randy Orton for his first WWE Championship. He kept saying that he was serious when he beat John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania, and that he was serious when he won his second WWE Championship a decade later. So, Miz ended up saying that he was serious when he took that title on Gunther's shoulder and made it the most relevant title in WWE. Of course, the Intercontinental Championship. He ended up saying that he'd have no problem doing it again. So Gunther ended up laughing at that. He ended up asking Miz, "Are you serious?" Gunther ended up saying that Miz is one of the greatest sports entertainers in history, and that he's all about creating memorable moments. So Gunther ended up saying that they can make a Miz TV moment that the Miz will never forget. Kaiser took one of the pumpkin decorations from the table and smashed it. So Gunther ended up asking if Miz will do something about it. Kaiser then threw a chair out of the ring. Miz then ended up attacking Kaiser and Vinci. Gunther ended up chopping Miz down. Gunther stood over the Miz. And Gunther ended up saying that Miz is not in his league. So Gunther turned his back on Miz. Miz got up and he ended up attacking Gunther. Kaiser and Vinci ended up grabbing Miz and he held Miz up. Gunther then ended up laying Miz out with a big boot, and that big boot knocked Miz out of the ring. Miz retreated as Imperium stood tall in the ring, and that was basically that. But surprisingly, I liked this Miz TV segment. We all know that Miz TV is a snore fest, but Gunther being the guest made it somewhat likable. And from what I heard, WWE is going to turn Miz babyface. And I'm like, are we seriously getting this? I mean, it could be a good reset for the Miz to get him back to being serious. But do you all believe that he will take Gunther down? I wouldn't believe it. But that was that. And as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, The Miz barged into Adam Pearce's office. Miz ended up saying to Pearce that that was the most humiliating moment of his career. And that if Pearce is really going to let Imperium do that to a future first ballot Hall of Famer. So Miz ended up telling Pearce that he wants a match against Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. Pearce then ended up asking Miz why he would give him that match. So Miz ended up saying that he wants to go over his accolades. So Pearce cut him off. Pearce ended up saying that he will give Miz a chance at a shot for the Intercontinental Championship against someone else looking for an opportunity. So Bronson Reed walked in. So Miz quietly ended up saying that Bronson Reed had already lost his opportunity. Pearce ended up shrugging. So Miz ended up saying that he'll be taking the Intercontinental Championship. Which, that made me laugh. I mean, am I supposed to buy that the Miz is going to beat Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship? Trust me, Gunther is going to squash the Miz. We all know that's coming. And then we had DIY, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa versus Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci of Imperium. This was a fun match. Really glad to see Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa as DIY again. We haven't seen them team up in 3 years. And I really like their theme, which was good. It wasn't too bad. But Gargano started off against Vinci. Gargano ended up quickly taking Vinci down with a Hurricanrana. He ended up chopping away at Vinci's chest. Ciampa then tagged in. DIY, Gargano and Ciampa ended up hitting a double team kick to Vinci's head. Gargano ended up tagging in and hit a basement drop kick to Vinci. Ciampa ended up taking back in. He ended up hooking in a side headlock on Vinci. Vinci backed Ciampa into the ropes and he started punching out of the headlock. Vinci ended up sending Ciampa into the ropes. He ended up blocking a kick before clotheslining Ciampa down. Kaiser then tagged in. He blocked a boot from Ciampa. Vinci then ended up punching Ciampa in the face. And Kaiser then ended up sending Ciampa into the ropes. Gargano tagged in. And Gargano and Ciampa end up hitting some offense on Kaiser. Gargano ended up kneeing Vinci off the apron and delivered a suicide dive to Vinci. And of course, we had DIY posing on the apron. Both Gargano and Ciampa clapping, patting their backs. Vintage DIY. So Gargano ended up forearming Vinci in the face. He ended up turned into a running European uppercut from Kaiser. Vinci ended up hitting Gargano with a back suplex on the apron. Kaiser then dropkicked Gargano off the apron. So Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back, Kaiser ended up turning Gargano inside out with a inverted German suplex. Gargano ended up getting Kaiser and Vinci out of the ring. Vinci pulled Gargano back, and Gargano ended up hitting an enziguri to Vinci. Gargano ended up going for the tag to Ciampa, but Kaiser pulled Ciampa off the apron. Kaiser then caught Gargano with a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker. Kaiser ended up going for the cover, to which Gargano ended up kicking out. Gargano then ended up delivering a DDT to Kaiser. We had Ciampa and Kaiser, going at it. Ciampa ended up hitting a pair of clotheslines on Kaiser, and then he ended up hitting Vinci with a clothesline. We had Ciampa end up going for the fairy tale ending, but Kaiser ended up getting out of that. Kaiser shoved Ciampa to the corner, ended up hitting a rolling Death Valley driver, and Kaiser ended up going for the cover, to which Gargano broke up the pin. Vinci ran in, but Gargano ended up taking Vinci down, ended up kicking Vinci in his face. Kaiser ended up kicking Gargano in his head. Ciampa ended up rolling Kaiser up, and Kaiser ended up kicking out. Ciampa then ended up standing Kaiser up, ended up kicking Kaiser. Ciampa then hit the ropes, but Kaiser ended up taking Ciampa down. Vinci tagged in, and Vinci and Kaiser ended up setting up for an Imperium bomb, but Ciampa ended up fighting out of that. So Vinci ended up chopping Ciampa's chest. He scaled the ropes for a moonsault block, but Ciampa ended up moving out of the way. So Ciampa connected with a knee to Vinci's face. Gargano tagged in, and so DIY ended up hitting, meet in the middle. It's a run super kick knee combo on Vinci. So Gargano ended up going for the cover, and there you go. DIY ended up winning the match. Good win for DIY here. For Gargano and Ciampa. DIY is back. But post-match, Ludwig Kaiser looked disgusted with Giovanni Vinci because Vinci ended up taking the pin. That was that. Overall, very fun tag team match this was. Really glad Gargano and Ciampa are back as DIY. And then we had Shinsuke Nakamura. Nakamura ended up delivering a promo. Of course, speaking in Japanese, he had English subtitles. He ended up saying that he's still looking for his next sacrifice. Nakamura wants to say that, does he have to find them? Or will they find him? What are they afraid of? He ended up saying, poke the lion. That's what a hero does. So Nakamura ended up saying that he is waiting. So that was that. And then we had a highlight reel showcasing Candice LeRae. Candice LeRae, WWE has not even given her a match in a while, and she's hardly ever on TV. Candice LeRae deserves better because I think she's very talented. She's good in the ring. And this was a nice highlight reel that they did, showcasing Candice LeRae. To which Michael Cole ended up botching and calling her Candice Michelle, which that was funny. But yeah, we got that nice little highlight reel for Candice LeRae. About Michael Cole calling her Candice Michelle. He's still living in 2005, 2006, when Candice Michelle was there. And as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had another highlight reel. This time for Xia Li, showcasing, who she is. But really like that they went back to Xia Li's, old, look that, she was not this Mortal Kombat, gimmick that she had. So then we had the match, Candice LeRae versus Xia Li. Candice LeRae was accompanied by Indi Hartwell, which WWE should also, give Indi Hartwell something to do. I think Indi Hartwell is, good in the ring. So give her something to do. But this match was a complete waste of time. Candice LeRae ended up taking it to Xia Li with some punches to the corner. Candice started punching Xia Li down. Candice ended up avalanching Xia Li, ended up hitting a snapmare to her. Candice LeRae followed up with a senton splash, and she ended up going for the cover, to which Xia Li ended up kicking out. Xia Li rolled to the apron, ended up sweeping Candice LeRae's feet. Xia Li ended up swinging Candice around, punched her in the face, ended up chopping at Candice's chest. Xia Li put the apron over Candice LeRae's head and started kneeing her. Xia Li got into the ring, but she ended up running into a boot from Candice. Candice then rolled Xia Li up, and Xia Li ended up kicking out. Xia Li ended up kneeing Candice in the face, and Xia Li delivered a nasty spin kick called Sudden Impact, which Xia Li ended up trying to lift Candice LeRae, but Candice LeRae, she was pretty much knocked out after that nasty Sudden Impact spin kick. So the ref ended up checking on Candice. Candice slowly got to her feet, but we saw her knees were very wobbly. Candice then fell down. The ref backed Xia Li up, and the ref called for the bell. So it was announced that Candice LeRae could not continue the match, so Xia Li was declared the winner. Post-match, Indi Hartwell got into the ring to check on Candice. We had a ref and a trainer end up running down to the ring to check on Candice. Candice then waved them off, saying, give me a second, give me a few minutes. So Xia Li stood tall, and the crowd was just absolutely silent. This match, in my opinion, was a crowd killer, in my opinion. But overall, this was a waste of time. And then we saw Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was walking backstage, and he was greeted by Jey Uso, main event Jey Uso. Jey wished Sami Zayn luck against Damian Priest later on tonight. Sami Zayn ended up thanking Jey for having his back. So then Jackie Redmond walked up to Jey, and she asked to speak to him. Jackie Redmond ended up asking Jey about losing to Damian Priest last week. Jey ended up saying that Sami Zayn will handle business tonight, while Cody Rhodes will handle business at Crown Jewel. Jey ended up saying that he wants to team up with Cody one more time for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships. So Jey ended up saying that he will go see what Miss Rhea Ripley thinks about it. So Jey ended up saying, "Yit," and he walked off. So that was that. And then we had a video package with Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler ended up saying that the 4 women she'll face at Crown Jewel on Saturday don't know how much damage she can dish out. So that's what Shayna Baszler, had to say. So then we saw Candice LeRae. Candice LeRae was still looking a little loopy after that spin kick from Xia Li, that sudden impact. So she had some ice on her neck. A trainer was backstage with her, as were Indy Hartwell, Tommaso Ciampa, and of course, Johnny Gargano, who is, Candice's husband. That was that. But Candice will be fine. And then we had a highlight reel of Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre ended up saying that he cannot forget what the Bloodline did to him. He ended up saying that Saturday is everything for him. He ended up saying that Seth Rollins broke his back trying to keep his championship. McIntyre ended up saying that he is willing to break it for him. He ended up saying that in 2020, Rollins was his first title defense, and at Crown Jewel, he'll be Rollins' last. So that was that. So pretty nice highlight reel from Drew McIntyre. And then we had another video package with Zoe Stark. Zoe Stark ended up saying that she will be the hunter, and the other woman will be her prey. Zoe Stark ended up saying that she'll prove she is the most dominant woman in WWE when she wins the Women's World Championship. So that was what Zoe Stark had to say. And then we had, we had sing-along time as Seth Rollins made his way out. Seth Rollins got on the mic. He welcomed Greenville to Monday Night Rollins. Rollins ended up saying that he's feeling like getting a little loose out here, and that he's graciously agreed to beat the bejesus out of the Judgment Day's bad boy, JD McDonagh. He ended up saying that he'll do that in preparation for this Saturday night at Crown Jewel. So Seth ended up saying that it will be him versus Drew McIntyre for the World Heavyweight Championship. Rollins ended up going on to say that he's a fan of McIntyre. He ended up saying that he'll say this as respectfully as he can. He ended up saying after hearing what McIntyre said a few minutes ago, Rollins ended up saying, "Boo frickin' who, you big Scottish baby." He ended up saying that everyone was suffering in 2020, and people had it a lot worse than McIntyre. He ended up saying they didn't know what they get their next paycheck, groceries, or their loved ones. Of course, referencing the pandemic. So, he ended up saying some never got to. So Rollins ended up saying that McIntyre can blame the Bloodline for his failures and shortcomings. He ended up saying that McIntyre can cry him a river and get in line with guys like Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes. He ended up saying they're not asking for any pity. He ended up saying McIntyre was a hell of a champion. So Rollins ended up saying this Saturday at Crown Jewel, if McIntyre can take the World Heavyweight Championship from him, he'll be the first man to shake his hand and call him champ, just like he did in 2020. Rollins ended up saying that he isn't the same guy he beat back then, and that the Messiah is long gone, and that he's no longer the architect. And there's a reason the people sing his song. And so JD McDonagh ended up attacking Rollins from behind, started punching away at Rollins. The ref ended up pulling McDonagh off, but McDonagh ended up getting away, started punching away at Rollins again. So the ref ended up backing McDonagh up and checked on Rollins. Rollins wanted to start the match. So the match got underway. Seth Rollins versus JD McDonagh. This was a decent match. Rollins immediately big booted McDonagh down as after the bell rang. Rollins ended up sending McDonagh out of the ring, started punching away at him. Rollins started chopping away at McDonagh's chest, and he ended up smacking McDonagh's back. Rollins bounced McDonagh off the apron, and he followed McDonagh around ringside and threw him into the barricade. Rollins then put McDonagh in the ring, and Rollins ended up approaching McDonagh, and he blocked the kick from McDonagh. Rollins then ended up chopping McDonagh's chest. McDonagh ended up going for a chop, but Rollins ended up avoiding that and chopped McDonagh down. Rollins ended up putting McDonagh in the corner and bounced him off the top turnbuckle. Rollins ended up sending McDonagh into the ropes and connected with a back body drop. Rollins then ended up grabbing McDonagh by his beard and pulled him up. Rollins turned McDonagh inside out with a whip to the corner, to which McDonagh ended up landing on the apron and snapped Rollins off the top rope. So McDonagh then ended up pinning a slingshot senton to Rollins. McDonagh then ended up attacking Rollins in the corner, started choking him with his boot. The ref then admonished McDonagh, to which McDonagh then ended up choking Rollins on the middle rope, and McDonagh got into the ref's face. McDonagh then punched Rollins down a few times. Rollins responded with some right hands to McDonagh and a chop. McDonagh then connected with a jawbreaker to Rollins, which sent Rollins into the ropes, but Rollins held on. Rollins then elbowed McDonagh, and he ended up pinning a back body drop, which was nasty, over the top rope to McDonagh. Rollins got the crowd fired up. He ended up sending McDonagh over the commentary table with a big suicide dive. Rollins stood on the commentary table, and the crowd started going, whoa. So then, as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, McDonagh ended up applying a waistlock to Rollins. Rollins ended up fighting up and elbowed McDonagh in the head to get out of the waistlock. So Rollins later on connected with a sling blade to McDonagh, which was followed up by a running knee, to which Rollins ended up going for the cover, and McDonagh ended up kicking out. So we had McDonagh later on ended up grabbing Rollins. He was sent up for a powerbomb. Rollins ended up getting out of it. He ended up pinning a buckle bomb to McDonagh. Rollins headed to the top rope. And then we saw Damian Priest coming down with a referee. Rollins ended up going for a frog splash to McDonagh, but McDonagh got his knees up and rolled Rollins up. Rollins ended up kicking out. Priest stood at ringside. Rollins then crouched McDonagh on the top rope, and he stared down at Damian Priest. McDonagh ended up knocking Rollins away, but Rollins ended up coming back with a top rope back superplex, which looked great. So McDonagh ended up going for a pedigree on Rollins, but Rollins ended up getting out of that. He countered that into a pedigree on McDonagh. Rollins followed up with a stomp, and he stared at Priest as he made the cover on McDonagh. So there you go. Seth Rollins ended up winning the match. Post-match, Rollins got out of the ring. He got in Priest's face. Rollins ended up daring Priest to make a move. Priest held the briefcase up. He ended up saying to Rollins, "It is inevitable." Rollins warned Priest to not waste his chance on him, to which that led to Priest walking off, and he stared at Rollins, and that was that. Overall, decent match between Seth Rollins and Jade McDonagh here. Both guys did really well in the match. So really like the wrestling from both Rollins and McDonagh here. And then we had Adam Pearce. Adam Pearce was backstage with Ricochet. Pearce ended up saying that he saw what happened tonight, and that he wants to give Ricochet an opportunity at the Intercontinental Championship. Ricochet ended up telling Pearce that he still has a bone to pick with Dominik Mysterio. So we saw Chelsea Green and Piper Niven end up walking up to Adam Pearce. Chelsea Green was shown dressed as Bret Hart, and Piper Niven was dressed as the late great Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Natalya's father. So Chelsea Green was not happy about the trick or street fight, but Pearce ended up waving Chelsea Green and Piper Niven off. Pearce then turned to see Ivar and Valhalla standing there. So Valhalla end up saying that the gods have spoken and that they want to talk about the Intercontinental Championship. So Valhalla was like, "Oh, we'll be in your office." To which Pierce ended up saying, "I need a drink." So that was that. And then we had Jackie Redmond. Jackie Redmond was backstage with Becky Lynch as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial. Jackie Redmond ended up telling Becky that it's been a few days since she lost the NXT Women's Championship. Becky ended up saying to Jackie Redmond that she's a little lighter on the waist and heavy on the heart. She ended up saying that if someone was going to take the NXT Women's Championship from her, it had to be someone with a passion, like Lyra Valkiria. And it was a good match last week between Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch for the title. But obviously, it was time to take the title off of Becky. The only reason why Becky won the NXT Women's Championship is because she never held it when she was in NXT. So Becky ended up saying that she isn't afraid of losing. And that's why she defended the NXT Women's Championship more in the short time she had it than Rhea Ripley and Roman Reigns. So then Xia Li ended up charging in. Xia Li ended up asking if Becky is scared of her. She ended up saying that she wanted a shot at the title, but Becky lost it. Becky ended up saying that they can fight right now if Xia Li wants. So Xia Li ended up saying to Becky, "We will, but on my time." So Becky ended up wondering when Xia Li's time is, because it's been 3 weeks. So that was that. Obviously, we're going to be getting that match, Becky Lynch versus Xia Li at some point. And then we had the Trick or Street fight, Natalya versus Chelsea Green. This was absolutely awful. This was a disaster and an embarrassment. These gimmick, matches that they do, this Trick or Street fight every year for Halloween and the Miracle on 34th Street fight, towards Christmas time, they are just absolutely awful. And WWE has to do it because, it's gimmick for Halloween with the Trick or Street fight, and, of course, around Christmas time for the Miracle on 34th Street fight. So the ring was surrounded by carved pumpkins and tables with candy on it. There was pumpkin pie on the table. So the match started. Chelsea Green ended up taking Natalya down and slammed a pumpkin pie into Natalya's face, to which Natalya was dressed as a bunny. And Chelsea Green ended up going for the cover on Natalya, and Natalya ended up kicking out. Chelsea Green ended up throwing a candy corn kendo stick in the ring. Natalya ended up hitting Chelsea Green in the ribs with the kendo stick, and then Natalya ended up hitting the discus clothesline over the barricade to Chelsea Green. Chelsea Green ended up coming back in by hitting Natalya with a trash can lid. Chelsea Green and Piper Niven repositioned the table. So Chelsea Green ended up hitting Natalya with the trash can lid and ended up putting her on the table. Chelsea Green got on the barricade. She ended up going for a cannonball, but Natalya moved out of the way, and Chelsea Green ended up crashing through the table. So Natalya ended up grabbing Chelsea Green and put her in a apple tube. A tube, for bombing for apples. So Natalya then ended up punching Piper Niven. She ended up going for the sharpshooter on Piper Niven, but Chelsea Green walked up, and Natalya ended up taking Chelsea Green down. She tried to go for a double sharpshooter on Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, but both women ended up fighting out, and they ended up knocking Natalya down. Chelsea Green ended up grabbing Natalya and brought her to a table. Natalya then ended up lifting a pumpkin, and she was waiting patiently for Chelsea Green to hit her. Chelsea Green picked up a pumpkin, and Nikki Cross was shown underneath one of the pumpkins. So Chelsea Green was scared as Nikki Cross was still in that trance. So Chelsea Green was scared. The pumpkin ended up landing on Chelsea Green's head. Chelsea Green ended up stumbling and tripping. Natalya ended up coming up, but Chelsea Green ended up sending Natalya into the ring steps. So Chelsea Green put Natalya on the top rope. She dumped out a bag of candy corn as if it were thumbtacks. So for this gimmick match, we have candy corn being used just like thumbtacks. But there was at one point where they used Legos as thumbtacks. Now we went from thumbtacks to Legos to now candy corn. So now Natalya ended up coming back. She ended up powerbombing Chelsea Green on the candy corn, and she ended up going for the cover, and Chelsea Green ended up kicking out. Fucking corny this was. So Natalya ended up applying the sharpshooter, but she ended up releasing the sharpshooter because Piper Niven got on the apron. Chelsea Green ended up accidentally hitting Piper Niven with a pie. So Natalya knocked Piper Niven off the apron. Chelsea Green then ended up hitting Natalya with the Unpretty Her, and she ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Chelsea Green ended up winning the match. Overall, a disaster of a match this was. An embarrassment and absolutely fucking awful this was. God awful. And then we have Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley ended up saying that the Fatal 5-Way has everything to do with her, and that this is her chance to beat every one of the top females in this division. So Rhea ended up saying that she'll claim this as Mommy's show, and at Crown Jewel, she'll prove that she's the most dominant woman on Monday Night Raw, as she will stay as the Women's World Champion. So that was what Rhea Ripley had to say. Of course, Rhea Ripley will still retain the Women's World Championship at Crown Jewel. No way she is dropping the title to those women in the match. And so then, as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, they announced what we're going to see next week on Monday Night Raw. Now, of course, it's going to be a number of contenders, fatal four-way match to determine who will face Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. You know, Ricochet will face The Miz, Bronson Reed, and Ivar. And then we're going to see Akira Tozawa versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Really? That's going to be a quick match next week. Nakamura is obviously going to win. Akira Tozawa coming in for another squash. So that's all announced for next week on Monday Night Raw. The Fallout show for Crown Jewel. Main event. Damian Priest versus Sami Zayn. So this was a alright match here. So Damian Priest ended up quickly taking Sami Zayn down. Sami Zayn ended up fighting back with a flying elbow to Damian Priest. He ended up going for the cover, to which Priest ended up kicking out. Priest then rolled out of the ring. So Sami Zayn ended up following Priest. Priest attacked Sami Zayn and whipped him into the barricade, but Sami Zayn ended up jumping to the top of the barricade, ended up pinning a moonsault block to Priest. Sami Zayn got Priest back into the ring. He ended up charging at Priest, but Priest ended up kicking Sami Zayn down. So Priest ended up sending Sami Zayn into the ropes and delivered a clothesline to Sami Zayn. Priest kicked Sami Zayn in his chest a few times. Priest ended up whipping Sami Zayn to the corner and avalanched him. Priest connected with a broken arrow to Sami Zayn, to which Sami Zayn ended up kicking out. We had Sami Zayn ended up going for a somersault senton on Priest, but Priest moved out of the way. Sami Zayn jumped off the ring steps, but Priest grabbed Sami Zayn by the throat, ended up hitting the South of Heaven on the apron to Sami. And then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Sami Zayn ended up springboarding over Priest, and he connected with a lariat to Priest. Balor, Dominic ended up running down, and Priest ended up Guzman and Sami Zayn end up going for the South of Heaven, but Sami Zayn end up rolling Priest up, and Priest end up kicking out. Sami Zayn end up punching Dominic off the apron, and Priest then end up hitting the Reckoning. And it's just like, of course, the Crossroads. So Priest was sending a message to Cody Rhodes there. And it's been a long while since we've seen Priest hit the Reckoning. Which, it was cool to see Priest use that again. So Priest ended up going for the Razor's Edge, but Sami Zayn ended up getting out of that. Priest missed an avalanche, and Dominic then ended up punching Sami Zayn down as Balor distracted the ref. And so that led to Jey Uso run down. Jey Uso clotheslined Dominic on the ramp. Jey then punched Balor down, and he ended up fighting Dominic off. Priest then ended up attacking Jey, getting into the ring. So Jey super kicked Priest down. The ref called for the bell, so Damian Priest won the match by disqualification. So post-match, Balor and Dominic end up attacking both Sami Zayn and Jey. And then Cody Rhodes ended up coming out. Cody Rhodes came out limping after what happened last week. Cody ended up charging the ring, ended up attacking Priest. Cody ended up booting Priest out of the ring. Cody then followed Priest and bounced him off the commentary table. So Sami Zayn and Jey Uso were fighting off Balor and Dominic in the ring. Jey super kicked Dominic, and Sami Zayn followed up with a clothesline over the top rope. Sami Zayn and Jey wiped out both Balor and Dominic with stereo somersault senton plancha combos. So Cody then cleared the commentary table off, and he pulled Damian Priest up. Out of nowhere, Jada McDonagh ran down. Jada McDonagh pulled Priest away, and Sami Zayn ended up giving McDonagh a haluva kick. Cody then ended up telling Sami to bring him McDonagh. Cody ended up giving McDonagh the Crossroads on the commentary table, to which the table did not break. So Cody then grabbed the mic, but he ended up dropping it because the crowd was chanting one more time to Cody. So the crowd wanted Cody to hit another Crossroads to JD McDonagh. So Cody got back on the table. He ended up hitting McDonagh with another Crossroads on the commentary table. Of course, once again, the commentary table did not break. So Cody then picked up the mic. The crowd was chanting his name. Cody got into the ring. Priest was standing on the stage, and he was shouting at Cody. Cody, on the mic, ended up saying that Priest tried to take him out, but he was unsuccessful. Cody ended up saying that he got back up, which is what his story is. He ended up saying, what is Priest's story? He ended up saying Priest is within a whisper of immortality with his briefcase. Yeah, he's not the leader of the Judgment Day. He ended up saying Priest walks behind Balor, Rhea Ripley, and even Dominic. He ended up saying when you think it's somebody else, it's always Cody Rhodes. So Cody ended up saying that he's back on his path. And this Saturday at Crown Jewel, his path goes straight through Damian Priest. So that was that. And that was how Monday Night Raw went off the air. Overall, decent Monday Night Raw this was tonight. A lot better than last week's show. You take out the Candice LeRae, Xia Li match and the Trick or Street fight. You could have had a good show here. But overall, it was decent. But anyways, that's it for the Monday Night Raw review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all Wednesday night for AEW Dynamite. See you then.